Hello and welcome to Band-in-a-Box 2022 for Mac. In this two-part video, I'm going to go through 10 of the major new features in Band-in-a-Box 2022 for Mac in depth, so you can get a really good sense of what you can do with this new version of Band-in-a-Box. Because it will go into a lot of details, we're going to split it up into two separate videos. In this first video, we'll look at All Tracks Are Equal, Playable RealTracks, MultiRiff, MicroChords, Motifs, and volume automation. And then in part 2 of the video, we'll look at drum stems, track settings and actions, remix full vocal songs, and the install manager. Now, the first feature we'll look at is All Tracks Are Equal. The idea with this feature is that in Band-in-a-Box 2021, we introduced all of these utility tracks. And they were tracks that you could record your own audio on, or you could also add some real tracks to them. However, you could not add real drums to them, or loops, or user tracks, or that kind of thing. But now they behave like the other tracks, the original Band-in-a-Box tracks, in that you can add whatever you like, drums, loops, or anything at all. And those elements can also be included in styles. So with the new release, you'll find many styles that actually load these instruments automatically onto the utility tracks when you load the style. So with this file here, I've now got a song partially entered, but on the utility tracks, these three tracks here were actually loaded along with this Remix Modern Country 16ths style. And I added another real track myself, this soloist, just by clicking on the track and going to Select Real Tracks. I added a couple of percussion tracks, again, just by clicking on the tracks and going to Choose Real Drums. And I even added a loop, just by again clicking on the track and going to select a loop for this track. So I'll just finish entering a progression here. F, G minor, A minor, D minor, and C. I'll do the same thing again, F, G minor, A minor, and then B flat and C. And maybe I'll just copy the first 8 bars and paste them right here. And maybe I'll just change the whole key of the song to A, so that transposes everything. If you're new to Band-in-a-Box, this is basically how easy it is to enter a whole song. You just pick the style, set the tempo, the form, enter chords, and then you press play and it generates all the parts based on the chords you entered. So I will do that now. And here we have the style playing, with the style tracks here, including these 3 style tracks which were part of the style on the utility tracks, the soloist real track which I added after, these percussion tracks which I added, and the loop that I added, all thanks to this new All Tracks Are Equal feature. Now, the other thing with All Tracks Are Equal is that using those tracks takes up way less hard drive space. Before utility tracks were introduced, for real tracks or real drums, when you generate the tracks over your chord progression, it didn't create new audio files to play back your song. Instead, with those original tracks, it would just point to the original source material that you have installed on your computer, pointing to different parts, so maybe a bar here and a couple of bars there, 2 beats from another file. It would just point to all of those, and that's what you'd be hearing when you'd play your song in Band-in-a-Box. However, when we introduced the utility tracks in Band-in-a-Box 2021, it would generate the part and write it as a new WAV file, and that's what you'd be hearing in Band-in-a-Box. And so it would be a new, very large WAV file for every utility track that you used. So this song, for example, in Band-in-a-Box 2021, if you looked at the resulting files, it would look something like this. You'd have this file here that would contain the chords and the original Band-in-a-Box tracks, but all of the utility tracks would each then individually be a separate WAV file. And if you look at the size here, they all total to probably around 200 megabytes for this one song. But with all tracks are equal, the exact same thing is now all saved in a single SGU file, which only takes up 67 kilobytes of space. And it's not just the hard drive space. I find it makes my workflow go so much smoother if you only have to keep track of one file instead of 8 different files. So the next thing I'm going to look at is Playable RealTracks. This feature now allows you to customize your RealTracks performance by adding your own notes. You'll then hear those notes using a MIDI sound, often a sound that was created when the RealTracks was recorded using the same instrument, amp, effects, etc. This means you can get the RealTracks to play the notes you want at key parts of the performance, or replacing what the RealTracks is playing for any sections in the song or individual bars or even just a beat here and there. So I'm looking now again at the last file I worked on to demonstrate the all tracks are equal feature, and I'll try using Playable RealTracks on some of those tracks. So with this file here, there's a soloist in it, playing a guitar solo. And it's just basically playing through the entire song, but I think maybe I just want to have the soloist going for like a 4-bar intro, and then maybe vocals will come in and I'll want the soloist to stop. But I don't want it to stop abruptly, so I want to maybe have something that kind of leads into the bar where the singer will start. So first of all, I'll make an intro. There are some features that can make automatic intros for you, but I'm just going to take the first 4 bars and duplicate it here. So then these 4 bars here will be the intro to the song. When it loops around here, I'll change this so that it starts at bar 5, so that when it goes to 36, it'll loop back to bar 5. So this is just a 4-bar intro. So I'm going to generate and play again, and we'll hear what the soloist part comes up with for those first 4 bars. Okay, so I really liked what it came up with for the first 4 bars. And then, as I mentioned, probably at bar 5, I might want a vocal part to come in or something like that I could do later. So I'll want the soloist to stop there. But rather than just sort of end abruptly at bar 4, if there was something that it could do to kind of lead into bar 5. And that's where the Playable RealTracks comes in, because I can add some notes that will be playing with the same guitar tone, effects, etc., but just add a few notes that kind of leads into it a bit better. So you can use the Playable RealTracks either in the regular notation window or the piano roll. The piano roll is in many ways a little easier to use for entering notes. So I'll go into the piano roll first, although I will show you in another example where I'll use notation. So I'll click on this guitar here. So this is now the soloist. And now we see some notes here on the piano roll. Now these are MIDI notes, but they're not. That's not what we're hearing when I play back here. So these notes here are not generating the sound. They're just playing in tandem with the real track, because the real track is an actual audio recording of the musician. But these notes are in here mostly for display purposes. So if I go into the notation window, you can see these are those same notes, but just arranged in notation. And that's kind of what the purpose of those notes is. However, with the Playable RealTracks, we can now add some notes to make them so that we're actually hearing those specific notes. Because if I change any of these notes right now, it's not going to do anything because, as I said, that's not what's generating the sound. But I'll show you kind of what I mean here. So it was at bar 4 here I wanted the solo to end. Now it actually already kind of ends in a pretty satisfying way right here, but maybe I'll just have it play a couple more notes and have like a final note, long note held here at bar 5, and bar 5 is where the vocals could come in. So first of all, I'll press the Playable RealTracks button. Now it says this will install a high Q patch plugin on this track. So this is now going to install a sound onto the track that will make it so that some of these notes can actually be heard, and you can change and add them. So I'll hit OK. You can see there's now a little green bar around the Playable RealTracks. That means Playable RealTracks is active for this track. If I switch to other tracks, you can see that that green bar is gone, but if I go back to the soloist track, there it is. Now, if I click on any of these notes, we'll actually hear the MIDI sound. It will play a little... So that's the sound that has been installed. So now, as I mentioned, I'll want it to stop playback here. So before I get started adding some new notes, I will right-click here and I'll go Create Mute Region to mute RealTracks. So that's this region up here. By default, it's just put in a bar, but I'll drag the end of it and drag it out so that it covers the next 16 bars or so here. So, well, just for now, I'll just do these 8 bars here. So these are all going to be silent. If I now start playback here, we'll see that we won't be hearing that soloist. Oh, and it's actually removed all of those notes from here as well. There you go. So I'm actually going to freeze this as well, just so that it doesn't at some point get regenerated. All right, so the last long note it played here was this note. And maybe I'll have it resolved down to an A. So what I'm going to do is if I hold Shift and Command, it turns the icon to that little pen icon. So I'll add an A right here, right at the downbeat of this bar. And I'll drag the end so it extends and plays a full bar. And you can see these notes here are sort of dark gray. And this new note that I've added here is green. And the green color indicates that it's a playable real track. So these ones are still just indicating what the real track is doing. So we're not hearing those when I play it back. But this one now, this is a note that we will hear. So I've just added that one note. Let me just play it right now and we can hear that note then play. And it's a little quieter than the others, so I'll just increase the velocity. Now the velocity there was maybe a little bit higher than I wanted, so I can bring it down a little bit and I'll try that again. There, that's perfect. Rather than just have this note play and then this note play, I think I want to have maybe an 8th note here. So I'll add another note right here. C sharp. There we go. And also, if you're not familiar with working in a piano roll, it's always easy to see what note you're entering in, because you can see it's kind of like a piano in that there are 2 darker lines here and then 2 lighter lines and then these 3. So these are like the 2 black keys, C sharp and E flat here. And then you can see these ones here are F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. So you can tell just by looking at the grid here what notes you're entering. So that was a C sharp there. And I'm going to go up here to where it says velocity. This allows you to change different things. I changed the velocity to make that one note louder, but I can also go to pitch bend here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Just so here is the 8th note, and this there's the beat 4, and then here is the an 8th note in from beat 4, and I'm going to add a pitch bend here. And what I'm going to do is this note here, I'm going to treat it as if it was a bend up to the C sharp, and then it's going to bend back down to a B, and then it'll play the final note, an A here. So with the pitch bend, I'm going to go down a whole tone. So I'm going to click here and just drag down like this. So that adds a few little pitch bend events that will bring it down a whole tone. So let's hear how that sounds. Oh, that was a mistake here. I then have to go back up to here so that the pitch bend is now back to normal for this note. So let's hear that again. There you go. I mean, I could have also just added another note here, a B, but I thought the pitch bend might be a little bit nicer to have it actually bend down. Let me just finesse it a little bit here. So let me solo this. I'll zoom back out again. And I'll solo the guitar so we can hear just that little bit there. And now I'll play it with the band in it as well. All right, so yeah, that gives you a little idea of what you can do with the Playable RealTracks. Adding notes, just a few simple ones, or you could get far more complex than that as well. I actually heard some other stuff that I might want to try as well. Let me just play from bar 5 here again. All right, so with this one here, I'm just looking at this now, and I'm thinking that it might be nice, I really like the part that it's playing, but it might be nice for the first 4 bars to be simpler, and then starting at bar 9, it can kind of continue what it's doing then there. So it's doing like an arpeggiated kind of thing, but rather than have it go up and then come down and continue playing through the bar, I might leave the notes the way they are, but just remove some of them and have some of them hold on a bit longer. So with this now, I'm gonna do it a little bit differently. I'll press Playable RealTracks to start with first of all. So this is now a different sound, one that actually corresponds with this guitar now that we're on this track here. So, and bars 5 through 9, I'm gonna do the same thing again, add a mute region for these 4 bars. But what I'm going to do, instead of deleting these or allowing Band in a Box to delete them and then adding my own, I'm going to first of all just change all of these. I'll highlight them all, and I'll go up to here and I will go change selected notes to playable. So we can see now they have all changed to green. So the real track is muted here, and it's now showing these as playable RealTracks. So now if I just play it, this will be actually playing the MIDI sounds for these 4 bars. So I'll play just a little bit of it. These notes here, as I mentioned before, they were really intended for the purpose of notation. So it might sound a little stiff, it might not sound great right now, but I'll do some work on it and we'll see how it sounds after that. But let's listen to it right now then. Starting at bar 4, we're going to hear the real track, then the real track will cut out and we'll hear these notes actually being played. All right, so now what I wanted to do is play mostly very similar part, but just with fewer notes and kind of just going up and then holding the notes through. So I'll zoom in again a little bit more. And so this note was fine, this one's fine. And so I'll leave these 4, but these ones here now, I will just select all of those and delete those. I'll extend all of these. Or maybe I'll leave this one here. I'll leave that one. So I'm going to continue on and do all 4 of these bars, but right now, why don't I just see how that sounds? Okay, so now the velocity is different as well, so you can fine-tune that. I could just change the velocity of all of these. And actually, I think I will. I'll just go like this, and that changes them all, brings them all down. Okay. So again, I'll remove some notes in here. I'll remove this one, and I'm just pressing the delete key. If you highlight notes, you can just press the delete key. So, I'll remove all of these extra notes in here, including this last one here. This one longer since I removed those other notes. I'll remove this and make this one longer too. So we're keeping a lot of what was there already. We're keeping, but we're just kind of changing around how it's sounding. And before I play this, let me have a look too. So it'll play all of these up there. This one here, this note could actually just hang on through into the next chord as well. So could this one. Let me see, this is a D here. I won't have the D going through because then it might sound a little weird over the F sharp minor there. But I'll hold these over. I'll hold that all the way through as well. There we go. Okay, so I don't know what this is going to sound like, but I'll give it a shot. First of all, I'll leave it soloed, and I'll just play it through, and then I'll play it sort of in the context of the rest of the band as well. So that actually was, I liked all of that except for this last note. I'll just take that one out and leave it. And then it's going to go, and you know what? I'll even drag these over into the next part because we'll still hear them go in. This is muting the RealTracks up until the downbeat of bar 9, but that doesn't mean you can't have playable RealTracks still in those parts. Oh, and these were, you know what? I'm going to bring the level of all of these down probably to about here. Well, I'll see how that sounds anyway. And now I'll play that in the context of the whole band. Yeah, so I really like that in that you have 4 bars playing a certain way, and then it goes back to the regular real track where it's a little busier and more complex. But you have that nice little contrast between a little 4-bar chunk and then another 4-bar chunk. So yeah, so I quite enjoyed doing that, and I think the results were pretty good with this one here. So I'm going to go and try out a few different instruments now. Guitars work quite well, but other instruments do as well. So yeah, I'll experiment a little more with some other sounds. So we now have another new reel style here with Bannerbox 2022. This one features a RealTracks first sitar. It also has a Dolak hand drum. So both of these we've introduced for the first time with Band in a Box 2022. Also, it's not in this particular demo, but we've also added tablas, and we'll probably check out some of that later in the video as well. But for now, I'm going to use this demo here to do another little test with Playable RealTracks, and this time I'll actually use Playable RealTracks with the sitar. Now, in the previous little segment, I used the piano roll to add notes for that country style, for the soloist guitar and then one of the rhythm guitars. But in this case here, I will try it now with notation. So yeah, I think I'd like to just maybe add a specific part for the first couple bars, and then I'll just let the RealTracks take over from there. So here we have the notation. Let's go back to the beginning here, and I'll play a little bit here. Just so that all of the notes appear in the treble clef, I'm going to just change the options here and change the clef split down a little bit. There you go. So now all the notes are appearing here in the treble clef. So, like in the piano roll, you can click in this case it's just PRT. So I click that and enable Playable RealTracks. Again, this will install a high Q patch, and it is a particular patch specific, of course, to this RealTrack. There is now a green outline around the PRT, and that means Playable RealTracks are active. So what I'm going to do now is click on here, and I'm going to make a mute region from this menu here. And I want it to start at the beginning of bar 1 and go until the end of bar 2 here. So from bar 1, and I'll end here at bar 3. So we can see now it's put this green bar up at the top, and that means bars 1 and 2, the RealTracks are muted. So I'm going to just press play here and see. Now it's removed those notes entirely from here. And then the sitar comes back in there. So now, if I add any notes in here, they will be the Playable RealTracks notes. So first of all, I'll go to Editable Notation, and I'll just start entering. Maybe I'll just start off on an F sharp. All right, so now we've entered it in. Those are the Playable RealTracks notes that are in green, and then it will continue with the RealTrack here. So in the last two examples, I showed you how you can mute the RealTracks for a part and then put in Playable RealTracks and sort of go back and forth between RealTracks and the Playable RealTracks. First, we did it in the piano roll, and then I did it in the regular notation window. For this last one here, I'm going to show you a way that you can actually add Playable RealTracks. So basically, you're layering on additional audio information to what's already there without actually muting it. So this particular song has a couple of electric guitars, and this one here is like a single roots thing, so it's playing kind of high bass parts more or less. So let's listen to that. So what I was thinking I could do with this one is maybe leave those notes in, but then add a harmony on top of those. So I'll go to the piano roll again, and here we can see this is the part there. So I'll enable Playable RealTracks. That again adds the patch that corresponds with this particular guitar. And we're in the key of D. The first chord is a D. So the first note is a D here. So I'll add an F sharp above here. So there you go. That's the sound there. And this is the note that we'll actually be playing. So what we're going to, when I'm finished with this, we're going to have a bunch of green notes mixed in with the black notes. And the black notes are just a visual representation of what the real track is doing. And then the green notes are the playable real tracks that are now going to be layered on top of this. So I'll just keep adding some harmony notes. The next chord is a B minor here, so I'll just leave another D in there. The next chord here is a G. So we'll put a B in here as well. And I'll put an E here. All right, well, let's see how that sounds. I might have got a couple notes wrong in there, but we'll see how it sounds. So there you go, and I could continue on doing similar types of things there, but now we're hearing a blend of the real tracks and the playable real tracks. All right, and before I finish up with playable real tracks here, I just wanted to go over a few other things in this playable real tracks area, particularly in the menu item here. So I've got a song here where I've already put in some playable real tracks just for one bar. It's for this acoustic guitar here, so I'll just play a little bit and you can hear what I've put in for that. All right. Now, first of all, I found the notes to be a little bit loud. So as I pointed out before, I could just do a sweep across here to lower the velocities, because you can see the velocities are quite high. There's another way to sort of set the level too, to bring the level down if the playable real tracks seem a little too loud, and that is this control right here. If I click on it and then drag my mouse down, you can see it's showing me a volume level that it is bringing it down. So I've now set it to negative 3.63, so let's try this out now. Maybe a bit more. Yeah, and that actually seems to be balanced quite nicely now. So here it is with the band. Yeah, so that's great. And now there are also some other items in this menu here. The first one is this one here that's grayed out because it's not something to select, but it's a very useful item there in that it shows you when we first pressed playable real tracks, it loaded a high Q sound, but at any time if you want to see exactly what that sound is, you can just go here. So this is guitar, acoustic, indie folk, and then yeah, and that's the sound. So if you ever want to use that sound, for example, if you like the way it sounds in here and you want to use it just in general as a MIDI patch, you can just by selecting that. And you can also in here go and select a different plugin. So if I pick that, it gives you the whole list. Now, first of all, I'll filter to show you that one that we just had. Acoustic, indie, There you go. That was this one here. But for example, if I wanted to just switch to an electric guitar for that, I don't think it'll necessarily sound great in context, but I'll just pick electric. I'll just filter by electric, and here we go. I'll pick this guitar electric overdrive rock blues rotary. It'll sound pretty out of place, but you'll get the idea. So kind of a cool sound. It just sounded a little out of place, but if the whole thing was like that, that would have been kind of cool. Now there are a few other items in here. Create mute region. I believe I used the right click in the piano roll to enter the mute region previously, but you can also do it just by selecting this here. I did actually do this in one of the examples before, where I took notes that were already in there that were just part of the RealCharts, and change them to playable so that we could then hear them and edit them. And then the reverse, of course, is true by changing selected notes to RealCharts. So for example, these ones here, if I select them and go change selected notes to RealCharts, they're no longer green, so now we won't actually hear them. If I play it now, because this region is muted, that guitar will just be silent there. And this one also could be very useful. Select all playable notes. That will select all notes within the entire file that are playable. And then you could do, for example, if you wanted to delete all of the playable notes, you could do that and then just press delete. Incidentally, because those notes were not playable, when I started playback, it deleted them, but I can just go to Edit, Undo, and there they are again. MultiRiffs is an amazing new feature that allows you to create your own custom RealTracks performance by regenerating portions of a RealTracks part or by creating the RealTracks performance from the ground up, start to finish. There was a previous feature called MultiRiffs, but it was complicated and difficult to use and wasn't nearly as intuitive or user-friendly as it is now. This new feature is basically a complete redesign of that initial concept, and it's easy to use and a lot of fun. So I'll do a few different demonstrations with different styles, showing how this feature can be used. Right now I've got this Jazz Fred style loaded here. So this is just a rhythm section style, and one great use of the MultiRiff feature is to sort of piece together a solo from start to finish, where you can try out a bunch of different phrases. So for example, you could generate a solo over the first 4 bars, and then press generate again, and it will generate a completely different phrase over those 4 bars. You could do it again, and the 4th time, a 5th time. Then you could toggle through all those 5 different ones you generated just for those first 4 bars, pick the one you like, and then move on to the next 4 bars, or the next 2 bars, or 1 bar, or whatever you like. So I'll do that right now. Now, a great way to look for information on features is to use the feature browser. So I'll show you that right now. You can just hit / and then enter. And so I'm just going to filter this by MultiRiff. And you can see there it has come up. So it's now giving us some information about this feature, and it's showing you how you can access the feature right over here. So you can either use the F8 hotkey, or you can right click on the track radio button of the track where you want to use it and go to track actions. So I'll do that. I'm going to put this solo on the melody track, so I'll right click and go to Track Actions, MultiRiff. All right, so this is the MultiRiff dialog, and you can select the track here, although I got here by right clicking on the melody track radio button, so it's already got that selected, so I'll leave that there. But you can change that up throughout if you want to, or pick a different one. And we just have to decide what RealTrack we want to have on this to use the feature. And so I'll press this. Now here's the full list of all RealTracks, and we could use filters to find exactly what we want in here. But actually, the very first one in the list here is Jazz Swing 140 beat per minute tenor sax, which is perfect for the song that we have right here. This is actually one of the very first RealTracks we ever recorded. So this will be a great one to try out, to use one of these Pioneer RealTracks. So I'll select OK. All right, now there are lots of elements in this screen here, and I will go over everything in here. But for now, we'll just focus on a few things just to get us started right away with hearing some soloing over this. So first of all, you can generate the range by bars or by a specific range that includes beats and ticks. But I'll just pick bars for this one. I think that will work quite well with a tenor sax soloing. So I want to start it at the beginning, so I'll pick bar 1, and the number of bars, 4 bars. I do want to allow lead in because I want the soloist to be able to start a little bit early, not be limited to just exactly at bar 1. And so I'll just try pressing generate now. So there you go. It generated that part over the first 4 bars. As it kept playing, you could hear then there was nothing at bar 5 and nothing beyond that because we only wanted it to generate 4 bars here. So now I'll generate again, and it'll come up with a different riff over that. Now I'm going to stop it right there. Now you'll notice that this now here says riff 3 of 3. When we first entered this dialogue, it said riff 1 of 1. And riff 1 is basically whatever was on the track before you came into the MultiRiff dialogue. That was riff 1 of 1. In this case, that was silence. But if we had actually generated a whole solo on the track before entering this dialogue, riff 1 would have been whatever was there before. Riff 2 then was the last one that I generated, so I'll go previous. So riff 2 was the first thing that it came up with. And then the next one after that was riff 3 here. All right, so I'm going to keep generating, and it'll come up with different options for me. Some of the phrases might be similar, some of them might be quite different, but again, we can do this a lot until we find one we really like. All right, so I kind of like that one actually. Not so much the end, but I did like that. So another thing you can do as you're going through this, when you're working on just a particular section, as you generate each riff, you can write yourself a little note in this memo area here. And so I'm going to write that I like this one. Or I like the beginning of this one, actually, is more accurate. And but I'll just keep going and see what else it comes up with. Okay, I'm going to go back to where I left myself that note here. I'm going to listen to this one again. So you can scroll back through all the ones you've done and then just press play and it'll play that riff. So yeah, I actually like that one, bars 1, 2, and 3. I didn't really like what was played at bar 4. So to move on now, well, first of all, I'm going to accept this one. So, and let's play that again. And I am going to now start generating a gain here at bar 4 because I liked everything up to there, but I want to see what it can come up with if it actually starts at bar 4. So I'll change this to bar 4 and I'll generate that now. Now, I quite like that one as well. I mean, I still want to generate some more riffs, but I think that might be the one. So I'm going to write, this is the one to beat in the memo, and I'll generate a gain. Yeah, not so much that one. Yeah, so I'm going to go back and find that one where I said this is the one to beat. Now remember again, this was riff 2. This was the first one I generated, but riff 1 is nothing at all. Or actually riff 1 was the remainder of what was left over from that last riff, if I recall. Yeah, right. So riff 1 is basically the tail end of what I did previously. But I like this one. This is the one to beat. I'm going to select that one, so I'm going to hit accept. So I want to just play it from bar 1 again in here. And yeah, I guess because I started at bar 4, it went 4 bars to bar 7. So actually bar 8 would be a good place to continue on now. So I'll hit bar 8 and I will, and it doesn't need to be 4 bars. I could change this to 8 bars. And even if I do that, I can still, if I like just the beginning of it, I can generate a gain from bar 11 or wherever. So let's see what that comes up with now. All right, so that one I think I like. Let me just play it again. I like that again to a point. Yeah, I think I liked it up to bar 11, and so I think I'll start again now at bar 12. Oh, actually, first, before I do that, I have to accept this one here. And now I can start again at bar 12. So there you see, I could continue on and go through the whole rest of the song. I think we're going to switch now and try out some other ideas for using the MultiRiff feature. But you can see with that, it's a great way to generate a whole solo over your track and have it be exactly the way you want it to be. So the next MultiRiff example will be with this blues style here. This is a blues shuffle with a new organ soloist. This song is a 12-bar minor blues, and then it goes to the relative major and does a 12-bar major blues. And over that section, I'm going to use MultiRiffs to add 4 saxophone parts, which will play some simple but effective 4-part arrangements. These are multiple blues shuffle grooves that play various rhythmic repeating patterns, and they're part of the bonus RealTracks with Band in a Box 2022. So we saw in the last part, F8 was a hotkey to get into the MultiRiff dialog, so I'll just press F8 right now. So first of all, I'll select the first track that I'm going to use, and I've got utility tracks 1 through 4 visible here, and those were the ones I'd planned to put these horn parts on. So first of all, I will select utility track 1. Now I'll pick the first reel track, and we're going to start with an alto sax, and I'll just filter this by shuffle, groove, sax. So here's the list of all of the reel tracks that fall under this category, and you can see for each one, there's a groove 1, groove 2, and groove 3. And I'm going to use groove 1 for the majority of this, and then there's going to be another one which will be held, which I'll use for a small part of it. But first of all, I'll just add this groove 1, so starting with the alto sax. So I want to have this at bar 13, and the number of bars, 12 bars. So I will generate that part now. So now you could hear it playing, the alto sax is playing these short stabs on the 1 and the and of 2. So that's what groove 1 is. And as I said, there are some other grooves that you can select, but I'm going to pick just groove 1 for now. So that's playing through the whole first 12 bars. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the other 3 tracks, but I'll pick the 2 tenors and the baritone. So first of all, I'll change to utility track 2. And now here I will pick tenor sax, groove 1 high. Generate exactly the same part. So now you could hear there were 2 saxes playing there. So now I'll just do exactly the same thing again over here. And now I'll pick the lower tenor part. And now here I'll pick the baritone part. So right now, this is playing that rhythmic motif through the entire 12 bars. But a very common thing with horn sections is that for the 9th and 10th bars of a 12-bar blues, the horns will instead play a held part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the alto sax, and now I'm going to pick an alternate real track. So this time I'm going to filter by held sax. So now we have the alto here, so I'll pick that one. And then for this alternate real track, I only want it to start at bar 21, and I want it to go for 2 bars. So I'll generate that with the alto now. So now only the alto is playing the held part through that, but now I'll go through and do the same thing with the other ones. So the high tenor part, alternate real track. That's this one. The correct bars are still entered here. Now I'll move to the next one, pick the alternate real track. The tenor low part. And finally the bari. And so now I'll go back to bar 13 and I'll just play this and we'll hear how it sounds. Alright, I'm returning to a file that I created previously. I used this file in the Playable RealTracks tutorial, where I had a 4-bar guitar solo intro, and then I used Playable RealTracks just to bring it to a satisfying conclusion. Well, I returned to this file because I want to use MultiRiffs to actually create another solo later in the song. So this soloist track is then muted from bar 5 all the way to bar 21. And there is a solo here right now, but I want to use the MultiRiffs feature to create an 8-bar solo that I've kind of pieced together myself and that has the phrases that I really want to have in there. So another way to access the MultiRiffs feature is to actually right-click on the track labels. And then down at Track Actions, MultiRiff. I'll move this over here just so I can see the note roll notes that it puts in when I start generating it. So I want it to be from bar 21, and I want it to be 8 bars long. I do want to allow the lead in for this one. So I'll just generate it, and then as I go through it, if there are any phrases that I want to regenerate, I'll regenerate them at that time. So I actually liked it all the way up until bar 25. I felt at bar 25 it should then start to get a little more intense. Intensity can also just mean kind of a higher range. Notes that are played higher, even if they're played at the same velocity, tend to sound more intense. So 25 and 26, I think I'm going to regenerate just those 2 bars. And then for now, I'll leave it at bar 27. So I'll go 25 and 2 bars, and I'll press Generate Now. Now, I did make a bit of a mistake there in that I didn't accept the previous one first before moving to this new generation. However, that's not a problem because that riff number, this is now riff number 3, which is just this 2 bars long. But if I go previous, that is still, riff 2 is the one that I liked that I made previously. So let me play that. So that was the one that I liked that I want to regenerate bars 25 and 26. So now I'll try that again. This time first I'll press accept. So that now has been accepted, and now if I regenerate bars 25 and 26, it will only regenerate that and it'll keep that phrase that I liked. So that one actually I like there, but then now that I play that, when it plays some lower notes down here at bar 27, I didn't like that quite as much, but I will accept this. And now I'll go to bar 27 and do 2 more bars. So I only actually wanted it to go until bar 29, so I will accept that. And then I can mute the rest after that, because then I figured that would then go back into a vocal part or something like that. In this example, I have a blues style loaded with a harmonica reel track we made with the great multi-instrumentalist Pat Bergeson. This particular reel track is what we call a background soloist, meaning it's playing melodic solo-like lines but deliberately simple, so they work great, for example, underneath a vocal performance. Now with this one, I'm going to be doing most of my work in the audio edit window in conjunction with the MultiRiff's dialog. In this case, unlike the last couple of examples, I already have a solo generated. But I'm going to go through, and for some of the phrases I might want to replace them with different material. Well, in the audio edit window, it's a lot easier to get a visual sense of exactly what parts you want to regenerate. So I'm going to start this off at the beginning again, and I'm going to play it, and keep in mind that I might want to record a vocal part over this afterwards. So I'm listening for what I'm wanting to hear is very simple lines, which most of it is for sure. But anything that kind of stands out, I might want to try and regenerate and see if I can come up with something a little more toned down. So anyway, I'll just go through and see what I come up with and see if there's anything I might want to replace. So I loved all of that. That was great, and I could totally hear a vocal performance over top of that with this sort of just backing it up in the background. This was the only riff right here, this last one here, that I thought I might want to see what else I can get with the MultiRiff and see if there's something a little more low-key for that bit. So I'm going to highlight this region, and I liked all of the notes right up to the end here, and I like the way this one trailed off, so I want to keep that, and then it can start off right here. And I'm going to do this in a way that is not going to overwrite anything before or anything after. So if you recall, F8 was the hotkey to bring up the MultiRiff's dialogue, and when I do that, you can see that it's already got, I'll move this over here, it's already got the range that I selected in the audio edit window is already entered here. It's bar 11, beat 1, 90 ticks in, and 120 ticks equals 1 beat. So that's a good way through the first beat. And it goes to bar 12, beat 3, tick 87. So that's the range I selected there. I do not want to allow lead in because I don't want it to overwrite anything before that, and I also don't want it to generate an extra beat at the end. I really just want whatever is in there to be regenerated. So I'm going to press regenerate now. And also I'd love too that not only do you hear a little bit before, well, you hear a full bar before the new material that's regenerated, it also keeps playing afterwards, so you can hear how this new material then goes into the next phrase, and in this case it went really well into the next phrase. I loved the way that worked. So I'm going to actually, like I did before, I'm going to write a little memo and say, I really like this. And but I'll generate again just to see what else it comes up with, but I think maybe I'm going to be coming back to this one here. So generate new. That was nice in that it was low key, but I still think I like the one before better. Yeah, so let me try it again. And you'll notice when I press generate again, you'll see that everything is exactly the same here and exactly the same here, which is exactly what I want. Yeah, because I've selected this region, and so that's the only part I want changed, and that is the only part that is being changed, which is great. Now, that might have been the same as the first one, because it can draw from some of the same material. So let me just play this. Oh no, that was different. All three of those were different. So I generated 3 of them. it says here riff 2 of 4, and of course the first riff is just what was there before, but this is the first one I generated, so that's riff 2 of 4, and I love that. I'm going to keep that, so I'm going to press accept. And now I'm not going to stay in this dialog. I'm just going to hit OK, and I'm just going to start playing back here again. Now, this is the second 12-bar blues chorus, so I'm thinking I'm going to sort of allow more in this than I did in the first one, just to make the second chorus a little bit more. I think it'll still sound fine with the vocalist singing over top of all this, but I'll continue playing through and see if there is anything I want to change. There might not be, but I'll see. So now I'm thinking that, again, I have no idea what kind of vocal part would go over top of this. I'm just sort of winging it here. But I'm thinking that if there was 2 choruses of the 12-bar blues with vocalists, then maybe we might want to actually have a harmonica soloist, not just a background soloist, but sort of a more intense soloist. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this whole next 12 bars. And in this region here, I'm going to press F8 again to bring this up. And I showed you a little bit of the alternate RealTrack option. So I'm going to pick the alternate one here. And now this is the background soloist blues shuffle Pat. But I think there's also a soloist that we recorded with Pat that was not intended to be background. So let me just type in shuffle Pat. There you go. So this is the blues shuffle Pat background soloist, but then here is a soloist blues shuffle Pat, swing 120. So I'm going to select that as the alternate RealTrack that we're going to use for this generation here over those bars there. So I will press generate now. And actually in this case, I think I will allow a lead in and I will allow an extra beat at the end for soloists. And I'm looking specifically at this. This looks like it'd be fine if something got overwritten kind of to the left of the region that I selected. So I'll generate now and see how that sounds. So I could continue going phrase by phrase and see if there were things that I wanted to change about this. But for now, I'll leave it the way it is. And yeah, MultiRiff is very fun to use and is great for coming up with a custom solo or a custom background part or even rhythm parts. We're now going to have a look at MicroChords. This has been a frequent request, the ability to have more than 4 chords per bar, or in other words, more than 1 chord per beat. With this introduction of MicroChords, you can now have up to 4 chords per beat, or up to 16 chords per bar. So for example, for a slow funk tune, you could have chords changing on each 16th note. It can be done with any RealTracks, any style. It tends to be most effective at slower tempos, but you have complete control. You can use it with any RealTrack, any style, any tempo. So I have a file here that I've been working on, and I've actually used it in the Playable RealTracks and MultiRiff tutorials, and I'm going to continue doing some work on it in this tutorial by adding some MicroChords. So I've added a solo to these 8 bars here, bar 21 to 28. I'll just play a little bit of it. So I was focused in on these 2 chords here, and I was thinking it might be kind of cool to end the solo to have the rest of the band, besides the soloist, do some faster chords during these parts. So what I had in mind, we have the B minor here at bar 26, instead of going directly to the D chord here, I was thinking it would go B minor, C sharp, and D to sort of ascend from here to the D and sort of go da da da. And then here I was thinking a similar kind of thing, but then it would go C sharp minor, D to E. So da da da. So I'm going to try that now. There are various ways you can enter microchords. You can just enter them right in the same way you're entering chords here, but there's actually a microchords dialog. And you can get to it by right-clicking, or you can also just press M and enter, and that brings up the microchords dialog as well. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here, and during this tutorial, I will get to all of it and show you the various elements of this screen. But right now, I'm just focused on the chords themselves. I'm going to move this up here just so I can see the chord underneath is a D here. Now, each section here is a different beat in this bar. This dialogue here basically represents a single bar of music. And since we did it at bar 27, it is the microchords for bar 27. So this is the first beat, this is the second beat, third beat, and the fourth beat. So within each beat, you can enter up to 4 chords. And as I mentioned before, then that means, of course, the total is you can enter up to 16 different chords in this single bar. I'm not going to enter 16 different chords myself. I'm just going to do what I described before and have that ascending thing at the beginning. So B minor, and then C sharp minor. You might have noticed I typed C3 minor. The 3, you don't have to put shift 3 to get the sharp. You can just type a 3 and it'll enter it as a sharp as well. And then D. And then I'm going to actually leave this bar for this one. I don't want to have the chords all changing through beats 2, 3, and 4. I just wanted this little ascending thing at the beginning. But then I want to do a similar thing, as I mentioned, at bar 28. Well, I don't have to exit this dialog and enter it again at bar 28. I can just use these arrows to toggle through. So I'll use that arrow, and now this is the microchords for bar 28. So now everything in here has to do with bar 28. So I want to do a similar thing here, but this time I will go C sharp minor, D, and then E. And that's all I wanted to do. So for now, I'll just press OK. Now you can see here that the chords I entered, the microchords, are stacked one on top of each other, but you can also see the underlying chord that was there before, the D, entered in but slightly faded out. So that is still the underlying chord, but these are the ones that will get played. And there's a good reason why this underlying chord is still visible and is applicable here, and I'll get to that later. And again here, same thing. We can see the C sharp minor, D, and E that we entered there, but we also see the underlying chord, which is E. So I'm going to just now play this from bar 25, and we'll hear that pattern play through there. So there you go. That was 2/16 and an 1/8 note, and then 2/16 and an 1/8 note there. Now I'm going to go back into the microchords dialog again, just by typing M to go back in here. Now, when I was listening to that back, I liked the first one, da-da-da. But here, rather than go da-da-da, I want it to be da-da-da. So that's a triplet. So you can do that as well. I'm just going to change this here to triplets. Now you can see there's only 3 in here. And you can combine triplets with 16th notes. If I wanted to enter more chords here, they would still be 16th notes. I would have to change this to triplets to get that. But now that it's like this, these will actually be triplets. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to start here from bar 25 again. And we'll hear now that this is still playing the same 16th notes, and these will be playing triplets. And you can see as well, visually, you can see that these are 16th notes because there's a slot here, here, and here, and then there's an empty space down here. So you can see it's da-da-da for the 16th, 2/16 and an 1/8. But here, they're all spaced out evenly, indicating that it's triplets. Da, da, da. All right, so let's play and see what that sounds like. All right, so yeah, I really like the way that turned out. So now I'm going to explain a little bit why the underlying chord here, the D here, and the E here, is significant. Frequently, these microchords, the purpose of them will really be just as passing chords. And you don't necessarily want all of the instruments in the band to be playing passing chords. Sometimes if just a few instruments, one or two, play those passing chords, but the others just play the main chord, that's very effective as well. So I'm going to show you that right now. We'll go back into MicroChords. And now I'm going to actually exclude a bunch of the tracks in here so that they will not follow the microchords. So I'll press this set button here to exclude. And because I only want a couple of them to be included, I will exclude all. Now I can pick a couple of these that I'm going to want to actually follow those microchords. So this one here, Ballad Power Eighths, this is the power means that it's playing power chords. So that one, I think I will include that one. So you can see all the rest have this excluded beside them because I selected exclude all, but then I selected this and set it to include. So that no longer has that excluded sign behind it. Now these other ones here are also power chords. So I'll include that one and include this one. So what we're going to have now is a lot of the instruments will ignore those, but those three different guitars that are playing power chords will all play those. So let's see what that sounds like. So I really liked that as well, and it was a little more subtle this time. You could still hear those rhythms in there, but it wasn't like right in your face. So you can see that these microchords, in addition to just allowing you to have multiple chords per beat, it also opens up great arranging possibilities for you. I'm going to go back in again, and maybe if we want to make it just a little bit more obvious, I'll include the bass as well. So the bass will now be playing those passing chords as well. And let's listen to that. I have one of our new funk styles loaded here. And I'm going to use this file to show you how you can enter microchords into the bars without actually going into the microchords dialog. I'm also going to use this file to show you how to use motifs, what they are and how they work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the first 8 bars and I'm going to type in a bunch of motif examples, different rhythmic patterns, just so you can see how they get entered in. For example, how you enter in triplets just on the screen here, or how you enter 2/16 and an 1/8, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to show you motifs down here at bars 11 and 12 and 15 and 16. And the motifs are different from the microchords in that the idea with them is not that you're changing chords, just that you're doing rhythmic hits on the same chord. So first of all, I'll just go up to here, and as a reminder for how to enter chords into Band in a Box just in general, not counting the microchords, there are 2 cells in each bar. And so the first cell is beat 1 and 2, and the second cell is beat 3 and 4. And to enter a chord on the second beat, you enter the first chord, and then a comma, and then the second chord. So there we have an F at beat 2, and then you could do the same beat 3, beat 4, etc. I'll just delete those. If you don't want a chord at beat 1, you just want it at beat 2, just enter nothing and then a comma, and then the second chord you want. and then that gets entered at beat 2. Okay, so microchords are similar to that, except they also involve parentheses. So it's basically like entering that, except for each chord, you enter a bunch of chords within a set of parentheses. So I'll start off here, and I'm thinking for this, maybe we have the A minor 7 chord lasting for 2 bars, and I think maybe at beat 2, I want decca down, like a 2 16th notes and an 8th note. And I want to just have a couple of different chords, passing chords, and maybe just the guitars would do that. So I'll type comma to indicate that I want nothing changed at beat 1. So now I'm at beat 2, so I put a left parentheses, and now whatever I enter within this, separated by commas, is what will be added as microchords. So, for example, if I type B7, comma, B flat 7, comma, A minor 7, if I was to put a parentheses on it now, there's only 3 chords in there, so that would be interpreted as triplets. But I don't want triplets. I wanted it actually to be a 16th, and an 8th. So I'm going to just hit backspace to get rid of that. And I'll put an extra comma there, indicating that there would be something after it. And now I'll type the right parentheses. And now when I hit enter, you can see those microchords are entered. And if you recall from earlier in the video, if you have a chord there, a chord there, a chord there, and then a space here, that means 16th, 8th note. So there the microchords have been entered. If I go into the microchords dialog now, we can see that that's how I would have entered them if I had gone into the dialog, but I didn't have to. And it was a very easy way to just enter those chords right in the main chord chart. I'll do another example, and maybe this time I will do triplets. So I want to do it at beat 3. So this cell is beats 3 and 4, so I'll actually just start it here this time. So I'll enter parentheses, and maybe I'll go E flat 7, comma, D7, comma, D flat 7. And now, unlike there where I added another comma, I won't add a comma here. I'll just put a parentheses. And there we go. That has now been added as a triplet. So it'll be da, 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 will be that rhythm. And actually, now that I see that, maybe I do want something at beat 4 here as well. So da, 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 down. So triplets and another 16ths, 2 16ths, and an 8th here. Now, I don't need to actually enter anything in here. I could just actually type a comma and go bracket C, D flat 7, C. I'll type another comma because I want this to be 16th notes. So I'll hit parentheses there. And now all of those are entered in there. So we now have those microchords as well in there. I'll add a couple more along the same lines. In bar 5 here, maybe I'll only put something at beat 4. So then before I type a parentheses at all, I just type a comma, indicating that I'm now entering chords for beat 4, put it in a parentheses. And here I'll put a comma at the beginning, meaning nothing at the first 16th note, nothing at the second 16th note. But then I'll go G7, G flat 7, and end parentheses. So there you go. Now they're at the bottom. So there was nothing for the first 2 16th notes and just 2 16th notes there. And maybe I'll put that, that same kind of pattern. I'll do that here at bar 7 as well. So comma to indicate that I'm entering stuff at beat 4. In the parentheses then, I'll put again comma, comma, D7, D flat 7, parentheses. So same idea as this I now have here. Now, I think this is going to sound pretty weird, particularly if all of the instruments are playing it, but I was thinking maybe just guitars 2 and 3 will play these, and all the other instruments will just play through. So I'm going to go to this bar here and set the include, exclude instruments. Now that you do have to go into the dialog for. But if I set them here, then they stay that way until they're changed again. Now I'm going to change them later for another reason, but I'll get to that later. But for now, if I'm in bar 2, I can just type M to go into the MicroChords dialog and set. I'll do the same thing I did last time, exclude all, and then guitar 3, include, guitar 2, include. Okay, so now we should have this. When I play this, the bass, guitar 1, and of course the drums and the horn section will all just play the main chords. They won't play any of these MicroChords, but guitars 2 and 3 should play the MicroChords. So I'll press play and we'll see how this weird thing sounds. So yeah, that was interesting. And because it was just those 2 guitars, it didn't seem obtrusive. You know what? I'm going to change the exclude here at bar 5. Maybe for these ones, I'll let it include the bass. So again, I mentioned this before, but when you set the excluded tracks, it stays that way until you change it. So we set it at bar 2, but we're now changing it at bar 5, and then it'll stay this way until we change it again. So I'll set this, and everything will remain the same. Guitars 2 and 3 are the only ones included, except the bass I will also include. All right, and let me just play it from bar 3 then. All right, so now I want to actually put in some motifs. So for bars 9 and 10, I want to leave them alone, but for bar 11 and 12, I want to have the horn section playing some short stabs rather than, because the horns have been playing just pads throughout, and that's what this particular style is. It's meant to be just regular pop pads. But I want to have an actual motif playing here at bar 11. So this one, it's actually possible to enter these in the same way as you entered the MicroChords, just sort of different codes. But I'll go into the dialog to show you in here. So this line here, the rest and the motif, both of these lines are to do with the motif feature. So it's very similar to the idea of the MicroChords, except the idea is not that we're changing chords. So we're just leaving this as C major 7, but we want to have certain accents, basically, in it. So what I want is a like 3, 4, bop, bop, 3, 4, bop, bop. So that rhythm is basically the first 16th note of the beat and the last 16th note of the beat. And I want them to be short, so all the rest of them in here, I'm going to put in rests. So it's only going to play there, and then everything else is going to rest. Now, I want this pattern at bar 11 and 12, and then I also want it at bar 15 and 16. So for that, I'm going to use this area here, copy MicroChords. So that's going to copy the current bar, and I only want it to be 1 bar long, and I'm going to copy it to bar 12. So if I press this button, copy MicroChords now it's copied to bar 12. I also want it copied to bar 15 and 16. So now if I go to bar 12, we can see that these motifs are here. I can also go to bar 15, see that they're here as well, and go to 16, they're here as well. Incidentally, when you click here, any bar that has some kind of motifs or microchords, there will be either an asterisk or a T if there's a triplet as well. But the ones that don't, of course, there's nothing here. Now, there's one more thing I have to do here and set the excluded tracks. So right now, the last time I set this was at bar 5, and so we had 2 guitars and the bass playing the microchords, and that applies to the motifs as well. Here now, I actually just want the horns. So I'm going to set excluded tracks. I'm going to exclude all and only include the horn section. That being said, maybe, I'll try for 15 and 16, I'll try something different. And at bar 15, I will also include the bass. There we go. All right, so now I'll play from bar 9 here, and we'll see how those motifs sound at bars 11, 12, 15, and 16. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you is how to enter motifs just by typing them in the chord chart, the same way as I showed you how to do with entering the microchords. Now, first of all, I'm going to go into a couple of the bars that have microchords and motifs and go into the motifs dialog. Now, you'll notice when we typed in those chords, basically we typed in this, what's showing underneath beat 3 here and what's showing underneath beat 4 here. So when you enter things in this dialog, it also shows you what you could have entered. Well, now I'll skip ahead to bar 11 here. And we can see it's done the same thing for the motifs. For any of the subdivisions of the beat where I entered a check, it's put a little X up here. And wherever I've put a rest, it puts a little R up here. So this now is the code that you could type in to get this very motif here. And I didn't leave any blank, but if I left them blank, it would just be nothing there. So this one here is a rest, but then no rest, and then 2 more rests. So it's rest, and then nothing between those 2 commas, and then a R, and then an R there. So that's basically how you enter motifs as well. So I'll show you an example of that. So I think for this one, I want it to just be the bass following these motifs. So I will have to go in and change that before I start playback. But to actually enter the motifs, I can just get started right now by typing. So for this rhythm, I want the bass to play 3, 4, bop, bop, bop. Okay, so I'll start off with the parentheses. And then it's X, R, R, X, close the parentheses, and then another comma to get into beat 2. Then it's R, R, X, R. Although actually I'm going to go back. Instead of that R, I'm actually going to put nothing there, because then for the rest of the bar, I actually want to then just let the bass player play whatever the bass player was going to play for those last 2 beats. So I'm not actually resting after that. So we'll have that little motif at the beginning, but then the bass will just continue to play. So now I'll press M to enter the motifs microchords dialog just to have a look at what was entered by typing that in. And you can see that's exactly what we want here. This is what we actually typed there and at beat 2. And this is the motif that's going to be playing there. And I'll actually copy this to bar 20 as well. And to bar 23, I think, as well. But now I'll set the exclude tracks to only bass. So I'll exclude the horns here. And one final thing I'll just type in here at beats 3 and 4. Maybe I'll enter triplets here. And we'll see how that sounds. So again, I'll start off the parentheses, and then go X, comma, X, comma, X. I won't put another comma, I'll just end the parentheses there, and then comma to go to beat 4, and then I'll do exactly the same thing for beat 4. So we're going to have triplets at the end of this as well. All right, so now I'll play back from bar 17 and we'll listen and see how that sounds. All right, so there you go. That gives you an idea of just the arranging possibilities that now exist with the MicroChords and the Motifs. Volume automation has been added in Band in a Box 2022, and it now gives you way more control over your mix in Band in a Box with the use of node-based volume control in the audio edit window. Previously, you could only set volume changes for tracks right at the beginning of bars, so no swells or fine-tuning of the mix could be done, but all that has changed with this new feature. Now I have a song loaded that I've been using in some of my previous tutorials, this modern country style with layered guitars, and I'm going to add yet another layer on top of it, this lush chord slow pedal steel. So the idea that I had with this pedal steel is that I would have it very, very low in the mix so that it doesn't get in the way of all of these other layers here. But then here at bar 45, I'll bring a bunch of the other guitars down and I'll bring the pedal steel up, just to kind of give the whole scene a shift, have a new vibe for this section of the song. And to do that, I'm going to use volume automation on a bunch of the tracks. So first I'll set the pedal steel. I'll go into the audio edit window, and I'll press this button to turn on volume automation. That has added this blue line here to the track, and we can see that it says 0 dB. That means with it set there, there is no change to the level of the pedal steel. It would just sound the way it normally would. But we can increase this to make it louder or decrease it to make it quieter. Now I'm just going to listen to a little bit of it. So it's already pretty low, but I really don't necessarily need to hear it at all here. So I'll lower it down to -3 decibels. So what I did was I just grabbed, there was a little dot at the beginning of the line, and I just clicked on it and dragged it down to here. So that changes the level of the entire thing. But we can change this line further on in the song, and I'll show you that in a minute. So let me just play a little bit again. All right, so I'm going to go back to the chord chart, and it was here at bar 45 that I thought I might want to have the pedal steel come up and some of the other instruments come down. So I'll go back into the audio edit window, and I'll go to bar 45. Now I'm going to click on the line here, just a single click, like that, and that adds this dot. So that's what we call a node. Now if I click over here and add another one, then I can move this up, and now you can see that everything that is playing at this point is quieter. -3.62 decibels to be exact. But then here it moves up to 0 decibels. And maybe I'll even bump it up a little beyond that. All right, so now I'm going to listen to it. It might be a little jumbled because we still have all of those other guitars in there as well. But let's see how that sounds now. You know what, it's a little hard to tell in the mix, so why don't I just solo this and we'll play it here. So actually, it could come up quite a bit more. So to make it stand out a bit more, now I'm going to go to some of the other guitars and I'm going to start lowering them. So I'll start here with guitar 7. So again, it's right at bar 45 that I want it to come down. So I'll put a node here. Now, if I was to move this, that would move, you can see if I zoom out, you can see that wherever you've added a node, there's a line between the two nodes, and that indicates at any point along here, that's where the volume is. So right now, this would be just a gradual increase in volume all the way up here to around bar 45, which I don't want. I want it to stay at the same level, but then at bar 45, I want the volume to increase. So I add another node here and I go like this. Or sorry, rather this one I want to decrease. So I'll bring them, why don't I just, for now, I'll just go through and change all of those guitars to -4 at that point right there. So same thing here, down to -4. This is now guitar 5. Guitar 4, guitar 3, now this, you'll notice this looks a little bit different because this is a stereo track, and the other ones we've seen so far have been mono tracks, but it works the same way. Guitar 2, and guitar 1. All right, so we'll see how that sounds now with the overall mix. And I think it could even come up a bit more. So that was a pretty simple example of how to use this. Just bring some instruments up, bring others down. But you can really be as complicated as you want with this. For example, here, I'll solo the pedal steel again here. And you could do things like, if you see that a certain area is a little bit lower, you could bump that up. For example, I'll put 2 nodes right here at the beginning of this area and 2 nodes at the end. And then that middle area I can kind of bump up a little bit. There you go. Now let me just play that back and see how that sounds. And I could even right here, where it was kind of dipped there, I could bring it up even more if I really want that to stand out. And now I could bring the band back in and see how that sounds. This part here I could maybe bring down a little bit again. But then I could come up for this section here. Maybe even more for that little bit. I'm going to show you another great use for volume automation, and that's using it to fade out a song. Right now I have one of our songs with vocals loaded. These are songs that we've put together with various artists showcasing how band-in-a-box styles can be used. I'm going to get into a lot more detail with the songs with vocals in part 2 of this bootcamp video, but for now I'm just going to use this as a way to show you how you can make fade-outs for your song. Now this song, as you'll hear, ends with just a final chord. which works perfectly fine for this song, but I'd like to actually change that so it fades out instead. So to do this, first of all, I'm going to extend this, I think maybe an extra 4 bars. So instead of the song going to bar 86, I'm just going to change that to 88. So that will give me an extra 2 bars to fade out. It actually doesn't really matter whether or not then the song has an ending because I'll have faded it out by then. But I can actually set that to not generate an ending at all even. So there you go. That has grayed this area out. So now we just have 4 bars of E ending it, which is, I think, plenty of space to create a fade out here. So I'll regenerate this. And so now I'll just play it from here.
And leave me gasping, and leave me gasping just to say I love you. Ooh.
So what I'm going to do now is go in, and from bars 86 through 88, I'm going to use volume automation on all of the tracks here. So starting with the bass, so I'll go from bar 86, I'll put a new node in there, and then at 89, I'll have dragged it out, and over those 3 bars then we'll have that fade out. Same for the piano, 86 to 89, drums, 86 to 89. Now, if this seems too sudden, I could always change that afterwards, but we'll see how this sounds. Now, the vocals I'm just going to leave, at least for now. I think they'll be fine because I think they're mostly out by that time anyway. I might bring the lead vocal down a little bit if it seems like it's a little too loud, but let's hear how that sounds now.
To say I love you.
Yeah, so that sounded pretty good to me. Maybe I might go and add 1 extra bar so that it's not quite as sudden a drop off, but that already sounded pretty good to me. So I liked it the way it was before, having an actual chord to end the song, but I also liked having the fade out as well. And so that's another great use for volume automation. So you can see that this feature now adds a lot of new possibilities for mixing and balancing your song.